Welcome on in. I'm just going to give you a quick look today at some of the news surrounding the PWHL Draft, which is happening this week. First of all, a lot of people were wondering where you could watch it, and it's going to be available on several streaming platforms, including CBC Gem and YouTube channels, as well as Twitch. Also announced was the list of players who declared themselves eligible, and there were a couple of surprises. The main one was Team USA's Amanda Kessel, who everybody thought would declare herself for the draft, but she had already announced she'd be taking a year away from the USA team to concentrate on her new role with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then Rebecca Johnston from Team Canada was a bit of a surprise, although she was thought that maybe she was going to retire. So those names are out, and that gave everybody a chance to kind of revamp their list of rankings of players that they would take in the draft. So here's a look at the rankings according to the Hockey News. And in other tweets, I saw just completely different opinions. So with such a short draft, it's going to really depend on the strategy that these teams take. It's not like just drafting a fantasy league, like best player on the board. It's going to be who fits your team, who gives you that extra maybe bottom six, who's a great defensive defender, who gives you a little secondary scoring, or a player that's versatile and penalty killing. The other thing to consider is, are these teams going to go for a marketing flavor, a hometown feel, a certain identity? Like we've suggested that New York might be going for kind of a young, scrappy feel with Abby Rock and Alex Carpenter. Do they stay in that lane and say this is who we're going to be? Is Team Boston going to have a great mix of Team USA and local players who played in college there? Same for Minnesota. There's a whole pool of players that played for the University of Minnesota or who hail from Minnesota. The consensus number one overall pick is Taylor Heise from the University of Minnesota, who will go to Team Minnesota, and that's a perfect fit. The number two ranked player would be Alina Müller from Switzerland, who played for Northeastern. And number three, some people think, is Natalie Spooner. So here's where some drama comes in for me. I'm really wondering about the compassionate circumstances clause. We don't know who those are, and I don't think they're going to release that. And to me, that affects the integrity of the draft. I'd like to know how they handled it, because those players are not allowed to be drafted by other teams. Natalie Spooner is a first-time mom and lives in Toronto. I have a feeling she would want to play in Toronto, so do they have to draft her early? Can they just wait till the end of the draft? Would they get some kind of consideration to make sure that teams weren't getting an unfair advantage? I would just like some transparency on that. Is Toronto going to take Spooner number two overall? The Hockey News has her in that spot, and it would make perfect sense. It does seem like Gina Kingsbury is going for a strong Team Canada presence, but how can you turn down Alina Müller? She's 25. She's an awesome scorer. She would be like a building block forward to have there with Sarah Nurse. So when that number two pick comes up, as a Toronto fan potentially, I'm going to be crossing my fingers actually that they take Müller, because that would just be the best player available. But a Natalie Spooner, who's a local player, would be a smart decision and not the wrong decision at all. To me, The Athletic had a real hot take when they suggested that Toronto would take Jocelyne Larocque number two overall. She's definitely a top rated defenseman, but that would be a really high spot for her to go. She is a little bit older, 35 years old. That would make just a great D pair with Renata Fast, but I would hope that you might want to take her in the second or even third round. If Toronto does want to take a defenseman in that spot, for me, I would almost rather see Erin Ambrose. She's a little younger and one of the strongest defenders on Team Canada. So there's definitely some intrigue about where Alina Müller is going to go. She did play at Northeastern University, so, Boston has their eye on her for sure. And she will get taken third, let's face it, if Toronto passes on her. The Athletic has New York taking 22-year-old right defenseman Sophie Jacks. She's Canadian and played for Ohio State University. That would be a bit of a reach, but she definitely has huge potential. So does a team, jump on a younger player trying to build their team for the future? If you take someone like Larocque, you're in a win now mode. You want that player who's just going to jump right in and give you like a number one defenseman. So here's a look at who the Athletic projected for the first round. Most people seem to think Heise is going to Minnesota, Jamie Lee Rattray is going to Ottawa, Melody Daou would go to Montreal, Spooner would go to Toronto, and then there's the goalies. Okay, so if I were a GM, the number one goalie that I would want to target is Emma Soderberg. She's 25 from Sweden. She played at the University of Minnesota Duluth, so Team Minnesota is probably hoping that they can grab her maybe in the third or fourth round. The next goalie off the board, I think, would definitely be Kristen Campbell. She's been a backup for Team Canada mostly, but she's learned from Anne-Renee Desbiens and Emrance Mashmeyer. The other goalie who will be on team's radar is Nicole Hensley from Team USA. She might be a good fit in New York. Nora Ratu, the legendary goalie from Finland, is also on the board. So that would give everybody their number one goalie. And then when do they take their backups? Do they wait until the late rounds? Do they even wait until free agency? So each team is going to select their 15 players and add that to their 3 signed free agents. And then following the draft, each team will sign 5 additional players to round out their 23-player roster. Hopefully the draft gets a lot of interest. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to get all the updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.